Hello, mamas. Welcome back to the podcast. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to give you guys an idea of what it is all about. Today's episode, I am interviewing an amazing local mama. Her name is Nicole. She is the mom to 3 beautiful children, and she comes on the podcast today to share her story of the loss of her second-born baby girl, Etta. She lost her at 36 weeks after a seemingly perfect pregnancy, and comes on today to talk to me about her experience with loss, how she honors Etta, and how she has grown from this experience and what her next chapter looks like. I just really want to thank Nicole for her bravery and strength and for agreeing to come on the podcast. It's obviously such a sensitive and heartbreaking topic to talk about, but she was such an open book and provided so much insight into what she has gone through and gives advice to any moms who are going through loss or who have gone through loss. And I just really appreciated her coming on. It was such an amazing, powerful, inspiring episode, and I truly, truly admire her strength. And I hope you guys enjoy this episode. It's obviously a heavy subject, but I really think it is such a great listen and can provide all of us so much insight and strength into what she has gone through and what other moms who have experienced loss have gone through. So thank you guys for listening, and let's get into the episode. Nicole, hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on. So I first want to start just by you telling everyone a little bit about yourself, your family, your job. All
Okay. So I'm Nicole Beecher. I am 37 years old. I grew up in Fort Edward, New York, where Tyler grew up. Small town. Still live in Glens Falls, so I'm close by. Married Joel, my husband, who was also from Fort Edward, but we didn't get together till after college for both of us. Been married for, 2011. So what's the year? 14 years this year.
Yeah, wow.
Which goes by fast because I still feel like I'm 22 years old. We have 3 beautiful children. My oldest, Nora, is 10. My youngest is 4, Cal, and that is usually how I describe my children to people. But I do also have our daughter, Etta, who would be 5. But I have 3 beautiful babies.
When I was thinking about this interview and how I wanted to start, I wanted, whether you were introducing your babies or not, I wanted to definitely include her as if she were still here, because I feel like just from what I see from you and how you honor her, I feel like you try your best to make sure it is known that she, whether she is here earthside or not, she is still your baby. She is still your second born.
Yeah.
And so I was interested, that was one of my questions for you, was when you do introduce your kids or when you do talk about your kids.
Yeah, so obviously when I first lost her, it was very difficult to try to navigate that conversation.
Yeah.
Especially in my job, I call on optometrists, and I have about 140 different offices that I go to. So when I went back to work, it was very difficult to go in and have that conversation over and over again. But 5 years later, I've navigated it a little bit better, although I got teary-eyed. But yes, I do include her because she is my daughter. If she lived a day, a month, a year, 5 years, and then passed, no parent would ever leave that child out when they talked about their children. So she's still my daughter, and I do include her. I wear her hand on around my neck every day. I have her on a ring. I've gotten tattoos for her, but yes, I do always include her. But a couple different ways I say I have 3 children, and then I'll say my oldest is 10, my youngest is 4, or I'll say, if I do feel comfortable, I'll say, I have 3 children, I'm raising 2. One I did lose, and you do get the, oh, I'm so sorry, and then follow-up questions after that. But baby loss is a topic that nobody wants to talk about. When somebody loses a parent or a grandparent or a sibling or something, it's always, I'm so sorry for your loss. And maybe they engage and ask questions, and it's not that way with baby loss. It's something nobody wants to talk about and nobody wants to believe happens, and unfortunately it happens far too often. So I just like to keep her memory alive and want to make sure my kids know about her. And yeah.
Do you find, we'll backtrack in a second, but do you find when everything did happen 5 years ago, did you find that a lot of people wanted to ask you about it? Did you find there was a lot of hesitation when it came to your friends and family? Did you feel like there was some hesitation with asking about how you were doing or what happened?
So I will say family and close friends were absolutely wonderful, and I'm so fortunate for them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have made it through without a lot of them. So I'm very thankful, and I'm thankful for that small town community because I'm fortunate enough to still have my best friends that I had essentially from kindergarten.
Yeah.
And then my college girlfriends too that are super close. So they were wonderful. They probably Googled how to handle someone who just lost a child because we were all in childbearing years and it was just very difficult. But they were wonderful resources. Outside of very close friends, no, it was very different. So I had a wonderful experience with my very close friends, and then it was very different. So people that were maybe not as close wanted to not talk about it at all or pretend like it didn't happen, which is fine. I understand it's hard to talk about. I didn't hold it against anybody, but there were some folks that didn't reach out at all that I expected to hear from, or maybe a year later checking in. Yeah. But.
So backtracking a little bit to your pregnancy, how was your pregnancy? Bring us through that a little bit. Did you feel like you had an easy pregnancy, a normal pregnancy leading up to that? Yeah.
So I was actually the most healthy with her, which is out of the 3 pregnancies, which is kind of funny. But with Nora, I gained 50 pounds. I had high blood pressure. I had thyroid issues. So going, there was a 4-year difference between those 2 pregnancies going into it, and I was 4 years older. I suspected I'd have some of that, but was trying to be much healthier. I only gained like 23 or 24 pounds with her. No blood pressure issues. My thyroid actually was tested every month and came back completely fine.
Wow.
So everything was smooth and wonderful. There was nothing that we thought was wrong or anything. So we went through the whole pregnancy completely in bliss and blind, and I just enjoyed it so much. And then I was absolutely blindsided. So I had an appointment. It was Labor Day weekend. I had an appointment that Friday before, normal check-in, 36-week appointment. Everything looked good. Going to the long weekend, we're busy. We're, hanging out with family. I had dinner at my mom's for Labor Day the night before. Took Nora to like the indoor playground at the mall that they still had. Just was busy, and we were getting ready to meet her. She was expecting to come in like 3 weeks, 2.5 or 3 weeks. So Labor Day, again, we were at my mom's, had a barbecue, went home that night, and I vividly remember laying in bed after putting Nora to bed and saying, wow, she's like kicking a ton. She's super active, and I didn't get that particular one on video, but I was thankful that I got some of the other movements on video throughout the pregnancy. But I laid there, and then she started getting hiccups, and I was like, okay, well, she's had hiccups before, but she's super active. And I was like, I need to go to bed. It's midnight. Like, she's not, stopping moving. Go to bed, wake up the next morning, get ready for work and to bring Nora to preschool, rush her there, get back home. And I'm working on my computer at home because I wasn't traveling that far, being that late in the pregnancy. And I realized at about like 9:30 that I hadn't felt her move. So I just was pushing on my stomach, trying to get, did you want me to go into this much detail?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you, the night before when you felt her move a lot, was that normal for her to move a lot at nighttime?
No. So now that like I really evaluated everything, that was out of the ordinary for her to be that active.
Okay.
So I push on my stomach, try to get her to move, go to Google, what are the ways to get a child to move, drink juice, drink something sugary. So I did that, and I remember laying on my chair in my living room, moving all over, could not get her to move. Still had no like idea that stuff like this happened, so I just called the office and said, I think I would like to just come in and get, you know, checked out. I can't get her to move. I know she's bigger, and you know, they say they say you're running out of room.
Yeah.
So they let me come in, and didn't even bother calling Joel at that point. I just went to the office, and I remember sitting in the waiting room, and they had like a clock that looked like an old school clock. And they made me sit in the waiting room because they were so busy for probably half hour, 45 minutes. And I just sat there with this like heavy feeling of like, I still can't get her to move. Why is this happening? So they finally bring me into the room. There's a new tech that I've never met with the heart rate monitor, trying to find it all over my stomach. Can't find it. So then I do start to panic a little bit, because when you're that far along, the second they put the wand on your stomach, you know.
Yeah.
And so but still in the back of my head, I'm trying to blame that she's new. She doesn't know what she's doing. And finally she finds like a very faint sounding, but very fast heart rate. And I'm like, oh, is that it? Is that it? And she's like, no, unfortunately that's yours. Let's just move you over to the ultrasound room. So that's when I texted Joel and said, you need to come. They can't find her heart rate. Just get here. And
so that was the shift when you were,
when I was like, something is wrong here.
Yeah.
But still in the back of my mind, it just never crossed my mind that she was gone. So he worked right over here in Hudson Falls. So he was only about 10 minutes away, but moved me over to the ultrasound room, and I have PTSD because I could never, even for Cal, go back to that room or see that woman's face. And it's not her fault, but her voice, her face gives me PTSD.
It's tied to that, to that memory, yeah.
So we go in there, and she lays me on the table and puts the, whatever it is, the wand on my stomach. And I don't even look at the screen. I'm looking at her, and she just immediately removes it. And the first words out of her mouth were, honey, is your husband on his way? And so I instantly knew, and I fell off the table and was a mess. But I later found out that she was not legally allowed to tell me that she was dead, that a doctor has to. So Dr. Serena Coombs came in and like running in and held me and told me. So they let me stay in there as long as I needed to, but I was alone, which was very difficult. But Joel did, when he walked in the front door, he heard me screaming from the front door. So the whole office obviously heard me, which is awful, but thank you. So that is forever ingrained in my head. They walked us out the back stairs so I wouldn't scare any other pregnant people in the office. And we immediately went over to the hospital, but it was very traumatizing.
So when you heard that and you went over to the hospital, did they basically tell you what those next steps were going to be? What this next?
Yeah, so they actually asked me to consider doing a VBAC, which I had to have a C-section for Nora. Glens Falls Hospital doesn't do VBACs, and I loved the hospital and my doctor, so I never considered doing one. I was always anticipating getting just a second C-section. So that was also traumatizing. You just told me that my daughter was dead, and then you're asking me to now give vaginal birth and have to go to Albany for that. And I just instantly said no. And I know that their medical reasons was, hey, let's avoid a second C-section if we can. Because if you want future kids and how many you want, the more C-sections, the riskier it is. So, but I had no consideration. I said, nope, absolutely not.
I can't even imagine.
You just told me my daughter died. And I never, in 36 weeks, planned on having a vaginal birth and prepared myself for it. And now I certainly am not going to go through that. So they did allow me to have a C-section. I did have to wait 4 hours because I had a granola bar that morning, and you can't, in case you choke on the OR table, you can't have food within a certain time frame. So that was at 11 o'clock. I found out she was gone. We walked over to the hospital, and I had to sit there till like 4:00 she was born. They wheeled me down at like 3:30. It was awful. So I just had to sit there for hours knowing she was gone. And it was a very strange feeling. I'm sure other lost moms have felt differently, but I did want her out right away. Like I just wanted her out of me. I felt sick. I felt just this heavy, heavy feeling of like, oh my God, this just happened to me. So yeah, it was.
I cannot imagine having to sit there for 4 hours
Yeah.
after you were told that.
Yeah, I don't even remember those hours. Actually, I do remember one thing that happened, which is very strange. So Nora used to have what was called nursemaid's elbow, where the elbow popped out. Happens with young kids before their tendons are like fully developed or something. But they would pop out all the time when she was like a baby, 1, 2, 3, but hadn't happened in like a year. We get a call from her preschool, which was across the street from the hospital, that her elbow popped out and that she won't allow anybody else to pop it back in. She wants mom to pop it back in.
Oh my gosh.
So Joel went over across the street while we just found out Etta was dead and we're in the hospital to pop Nora's elbow back in, but she wouldn't let Joel do it either. She had to come to the hospital to have me do it. And we didn't tell her at the time that Etta was gone, but I had to like compose myself, pop her elbow back in 20 minutes before I went down to the OR to have Etta. And they like rushed her back to preschool. Yeah. But besides the elbow, I don't remember anything else that happened before I went to the OR, except for there was a very strange, I don't know what I believe in. I was raised Catholic. I'm not supposed to believe in certain things, but I do, and I'm striving to like figure out why, and I want her to be around me, and I've gone to see mediums and things like that to get answers, but they had me in a wheelchair to wheel me down to the OR, and I looked at the clock, which looked exactly like the clock from the office, that white and black school clock. I hate looking at them now if I see them, but it was at 3:30, and I just wanted to see what time it was, and as I'm looking at the clock at 3:30, it starts to spin, both minute hand and hour hand. And I said to the nurse, I said, Christine, look at that clock. And she's like, oh, that's weird. I'll have to get maintenance to like fix it. My mom and sister said as soon as I wheeled out of the room, down to the OR, it adjusted and went back to the correct time.
I just got full chills.
Like there was somebody telling me I was going to be okay, that I would have to go through it, but it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's crazy.
So after your C-section, what did that look like those next couple of days for you and Joel?
Terrible. They took her out, and my doctor's response was, Nicole, she's beautiful. She's pink. Like she literally looks like she should be breathing right now. Some stillborn babies had passed for a while, and maybe their mother didn't realize, so they're discolored, or there's skin slippage and things like that. But she didn't have any of that. She really was perfect. But I will say that I was afraid, which I wish I could go back, but I was like afraid to see her and hold her. So she was born at 4, but I didn't actually hold her for the first time and have her in the room until like 11 o'clock that night, which is like one of my biggest regrets. Because I would just never put her down if I could ever get her back. I don't know what I was afraid of. She was already gone. I was afraid to like hurt her body. She was limp, and being around a dead body is strange. So, but after I held her, I just love her so much. But they did have to bring her back to, I'm guessing, a morgue, like a cooling room, because we didn't have that cuddle cot that we ended up donating. So the next day we kept bringing her back into the room though, and I held her as much as I could, and we took pictures, and it was a lot. There were sections I'm sure I don't remember blurred out. I'm thankful that somebody took my phone and took some pictures. I think my sister did, and very thankful for those because I'll never have, they're all I have.
Yeah.
And there was a professional photographer that, there's an organization, which I don't know if you know of being a photographer. It's called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. It's a nonprofit, and photographers can donate I think they donate their time and go and take pictures for families, and edit the photos and provide them to the families. And I don't even know who the photographer was, somebody locally. I was fortunate enough to have somebody come and take her pictures.
Yeah.
And the nurse was very helpful with that and saying, hey, you're going to want these down the road, like ask for permission. But yeah.
So while you were in the room with Joel and in the room with Etta, did you feel like you were looking at the clock, waiting, just hoping that they weren't saying, okay, like it's time? Did you feel like they gave you as much time as you wanted? When you were going through those few days, did you feel, I know there's never enough time.
Yeah.
But did you feel like you just wanted to sit there forever?
Yes. And I will say, Glens Falls Hospital was wonderful. They gave me all the time I wanted.
Yeah, that's good.
They were, because I have heard stories from other lost moms that I've connected with that it was not the case, that they were pushed out. They had less than 24 hours and just all these devastating things. So they gave us, I think we were there at least 2 or 3 nights, at least 2 nights, maybe 3 nights. Like you said, though, it's never enough. But the only thing that got me to wake up every morning was Nora. I still needed to go home to parent her. So I'm so thankful that we did have her first. And I'm thankful that the funeral home allowed us to go. So in between the days of leaving the hospital and when we had her services, there were a handful of days. I want to say there was maybe 4 days, and we were able to go to the funeral home every day, hold her for as long as we wanted, but we'd go for probably about 45 minutes to an hour, hold her and just sit with her until we had her services, and then ended up burying her. But it was difficult because at the end, obviously, she changed throughout the time. She didn't change in the hospital that much, but she did. Once she got to the funeral home, they embalmed her, and so that changed her some. And then obviously, as the days go on, they start to deteriorate. So that last day the day we buried her, I have some pictures, but she had discoloration and stuff, so that was difficult to see.
I was just gonna say that must have been so hard to see, to have that moment when you first had her in the C-section, to them saying she looks beautiful, she's pink, and then seeing that, as those days go on.
Yeah.
It's gotta be ingrained.
Yeah, it is. But again, I'm thankful for the pictures because I can see all the details. I can zoom in for her little nose and her little fingers and her feet and everything. So,
yeah. Pictures are very special.
Yes, they are.
So, I know you mentioned Nora, and obviously being so grateful that you had her as well. She was obviously very young when this all happened. How did you and Joel go about talking to her about Etta and everything that happened?
Yeah, she was young. She was only 4, 4.5. And so we lost Etta on September 5th, and she started pre-K on September 6th. So it was a very difficult time too, because she had gone to preschool, but never like a formal school setting. So we had to explain to her that a sister wasn't coming home anymore. So that was very difficult. Her little brain couldn't comprehend it. We couldn't even comprehend it as adults. So kids are resilient though. Like, she would go from asking questions and being sad to immediately, Mom, play with me, let's go do this, and giggling and laughing. So I wish adults could act like that because they just are so resilient. But she did act out a little bit in school, and I'm not sure if it was because that's just her personality and she's very strong-willed, or if that was because she was feeling these emotions that she didn't know how to express. Yeah. But she's figured it out now. She's still strong-willed, but... And
do you feel like... I know it seems like you do a very good job with letting your children know, talking about Etta and keeping her her memory around. Does Nora talk about her? Does she?
She does. And so this was also a difficult transition with her starting school. You get school forms home that say parents, siblings, animals, all those things that we have to fill out that are just day-to-day things, but for somebody that has lost a child, it's not an easy thing to fill out every year. So we do fill out that is her sister, because if she's talking about her, I don't want certainly somebody to think she's got an imaginary friend or something. So we do put Etta on all the forms, and we do say passed away. But where were we going with? Oh, how she talks about him. Yeah. So she tells her friends, and I mean, she's in 4th grade now. They talk about it. Her kindergarten teacher did say when she brought a picture in of her and being a bunch of 5-year-olds, they were all very curious, and she had to kind of navigate that, which I've since apologized because I was still in deep grief then. I probably should not have allowed my 5-year-old to bring in a picture of her dead sibling, but she wanted to, and I didn't want to deter her from that. But yeah, I think it's going to be different with Cal because Cal wasn't around when and so we've always talked about her, but it won't be like that so much for him. But yeah.
Did you, and again, this is obviously a very personal question, so you do not have to answer if
I'm
you
an
don't
open
feel
book.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Did you ever get an answer as to what exactly happened?
So no, and thank you for asking. I was going to mention that, but we did do a full autopsy. They offered it at the hospital, and we agreed. It took however many weeks to come back, and I think it was a mistake. My doctor says it was a mistake. They actually sent the autopsy report directly to my house instead of the doctor. So I opened my mail one day, like weeks after losing my child, to an autopsy report. That is all medical terms that I don't know how to read, but I'm Googling, frantically reading and Googling every word. But she was perfectly healthy. They had no reason to give us, which I can't decide if I want or not want. Like, do I want that, hey, she had a heart defect and she would have suffered her whole life, so this, I wouldn't have wanted my child to suffer, or to have this no answer. And I don't know what's easier, but it kills me every day to not know why. I begged my doctor to give me some sort of reason, because you can't just go to bed one night with her kicking away and wake up and have her dead. Like, it's just not, there needs to be a reason. Yeah. So all she could give me was that she possibly compressed her cord. There was no knot in it. There wasn't wrapped around her ankle or her neck or anything. But if she compressed her cord, it takes 20 minutes for a baby to compress their cord and they pass away. 20 minutes.
So how does a baby compress their cord?
So if she was in the middle of the night, I was laying on my side or something, or she pinched it somehow with her foot or her body somehow and pinched it enough to not allow 20 minutes. But also I will say, I brought up the kicking and the hiccuping. Yeah. Since I've done research, that I think was a sign of distress. So I'm wondering if it wasn't just in the middle of the night. At some point, something was going on, or maybe she was compressing it then. Mm-hmm. But hiccups are completely normal. I don't want to scare anybody. I've had hiccups with all 3 pregnancies. But there is another instance where hiccups can be a sign of distress if they last like a significant amount of time. I certainly didn't know that at the time, or was keeping track of how long she was having hiccups for, but that can be a sign of distress.
I did not know that.
Yep. So, wow. And the frantic kicking, I'm wondering, or a lot of kicking was part of it too.
Maybe out of the ordinary for her. Yeah.
Yep. But no, so we never got an answer. I begged for a sign for her forever to give me an answer. She gives me signs all the time, but certainly no like definitive answer. I don't know. I want to believe that she maybe was going to suffer somehow, and this was the way to avoid that.
Yeah.
I'd rather take the suffering on than have her have suffered somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be hard for you to not have that answer.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not that getting an answer would have changed anything, but I'm sure not knowing exactly what happened.
Yeah. To have everything be perfect,
Yeah.
her look perfect, her organs be perfect, everything. And if she was born the day before, she would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How was your, getting pregnant with Cal? I actually was listening to a podcast the other day. I was telling you, all I do is listen to podcasts.
Yep.
I actually was listening to a podcast the other day of a mom who did lose her first baby, and when she decided to get pregnant with her second, it was obviously
terrible.
Yeah. I mean, just that experience. Did you and Joel decide when you were ready to have Cal? Did you kind of just say if it happens, it happens?
No, we decided. So they told me because of the C-section that I asked my doctor how long I needed to wait. I thought I was older then, but I still was only, 31, turning 32. So, but I had this urge, not that I wanted to replace her by any means, but I had an urge that I wanted to have another baby, like right away. So the doctor said you have to wait at least 6 months because then that'll be at least a year between your 2 C-sections. Like you cannot go shorter than a year for 2 C-sections because of rupture and things like that. You need to let your body heal. So it had taken like 6 or 7 months to get pregnant for Etta. So at month 4, I'm like, well, we might as well start trying because it took a little while with Etta. It'll take a little bit. Not pregnant month 4, not pregnant month 5. I want to say that was her looking down on me saying, Mom, you're not listening.
Not time yet. Yeah.
And then month 6, exactly, we got pregnant with Cal. So it was planned. I wanted to be pregnant right away. But it was, following the months of losing her, the worst 8 months of my entire life. It really was mentally and physically exhausting. I was super healthy with him, but I mentally was an absolute mess. I've never had anxiety. I've never had panic attacks, and I'm thankful for that. But I had them during that pregnancy, and I didn't know what they were. Panic attack, you think you're dying. It was awful.
Did you feel like you woke up every day and just, not that you were waiting for something to happen, but you were just on edge?
Yeah,
constantly.
Every day. Constant. Up until like the 12-week mark, I was like somewhat okay because it's so early. You can't detect a heart rate on the, from any outside machinery yet. So I was somewhat okay then. And I was still in super heavy grief for Etta and I wasn't showing yet or anything. So I wasn't like processing, okay, this is, another baby coming. But as soon as I could start tracking his heart rate, and I did have a Doppler at home, which I don't know if it was good for my mental health or bad, but I used it 24/7. I would constantly check his heart rate. I got to a point where my anxiety got so bad that I would bring it with me in the car, and in the middle of the day, I would pull over in a Stewart's parking lot and lay back in my seat, and if I didn't feel it moving for a minute, I'd check his heart rate. It was an ongoing joke that I would just show up to labor and delivery if I felt off. Like I wouldn't even call my office first, and thank goodness they were all wonderful, but I was like, knock, knock, I'm here. Check me out. And at the end, I asked if I could just live there, but they said no. But it was awful. He, from the start, was scheduled to come at 37 weeks, C-section again. And then as my anxiety got worse, they bumped it up to another week for me, 36 weeks was Halloween. So she said, you don't want a Halloween baby. Let's do 35 and 6. Or no, sorry, that was 37 weeks. They bumped it up to 36. And then my anxiety got so bad that they bumped it up a couple extra days. So he ended up being born at 35 weeks, 6 days. I lost Etta at 36 weeks, 1 day. I could not mentally get to that 36-1. I just was a mess towards the end. So she finally said, your anxiety is not helping him inside. He's big enough. We gave him the steroid. We knew he was coming early, so we did steroid shots for his lungs, and we knew he was big enough. So they finally agreed 35 and 6, which she had to get special approval for in the state of New York. There was a form I had to sign that I was mentally insane, but he came out screaming, and that's all I cared about. And we got it on video, or I think they were live photos, where Glens Falls Hospital started doing like a peekaboo screen in the OR. So there's a clear plastic screen where you could watch him being born. And we've got a couple live photos of me just screaming, he's crying. And
that cry was probably the best sound.
Yeah.
All you wanted to hear.
It was amazing. It was, all the nurses were crying too in the OR, and even my doctor, which was awesome because it was so silent just 13 months before.
Yeah.
So
after you had him, while you were there in the hospital, when you guys first went home, where was your head at? What were your emotions? Because it's got to be such a juxtaposition with you being so obviously elated that you have a little baby boy, and then did it bring you back to the experience with Etta, or did you ever sit and think like, I was supposed to be home with her?
Yeah, it was it was hard. I think the first few weeks were just getting used to having two at home.
Yeah.
And newborn stage is just exhausting in general, but just getting used to that routine. I was so in love with him, it wasn't even funny. I just couldn't couldn't keep my hands off of him. But yeah, to carry that, it's very difficult, and it still is today, to describe how every time I look at him, everybody talks about rainbow babies, but I would have never had children 13 months apart. It took me 4 years to have my second, so I know he would not be here if Etta had lived.
Yeah.
And it's a very weird thing as a mom, because I want her here so much, but I cannot imagine my life without him either.
Yeah.
That I just look, and he's so special. And I'm glad he's here, and he's has a life, and he brings so much joy to us, but it's a very strange feeling because he wouldn't be here if it weren't for her loss.
Yeah, that's got to be so many emotions at once.
Yeah, it's strange. But we're so thankful for him. He brings so much joy.
Yeah.
I did see a medium who told me that she's like, do you want me to tell you what I'm feeling right now? And I said, yes, I'm paying you $150 for the hour. I want you tell me exactly everything you're seeing. And she kept zooming in on a picture of Cal, and she said, I know you did not come here expecting to hear this, but Etta and Cal's soul are the same. That she came back through him. And then I saw another medium who said something different. So I still don't know what to believe, but I just look at him and I say, do you know Etta? Are you Etta? Like,
I was actually going to ask you, do you ever look at him and see her?
I do. And I've done side-by-sides, especially when he was a baby, not so much anymore, because I wouldn't know what she would look like now, but I did a lot of side-by-sides when they were both, when she was born and when he was a newborn, and they looked like identical in certain photos.
Really?
So, yeah. I mean, I do think him and Nora look pretty close, too. I mean, she's more the Beecher side, where he, I think, looks more like me. But, yeah, I think she would, out of what it would have been, closer to what Cal looks like, but probably a good mix in between the two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So what are ways that, I know you've done a lot, what are the ways that you have kept her memory alive and honored her?
So just talking about her, including her in conversation. I even just this past weekend, I had to go to a conference, and gentlemen who I haven't seen in years asked me how many children I had. I said 3, and I can talk through it most of the time, although I've cried today, but most of the time I can talk through it without crying anymore. But just including her, saying her name, my tattoos, I'm now addicted, and Nora keeps saying, Mom, you keep getting Etta tattoos. Like, when are you going to get one for us? So, which I have plenty of tattoos for them too. But I don't know, just talking about her and including her in everything I can. I just love her so much.
Around the holidays too, you guys do a tree in honor of her, right?
We did. They didn't do it the last couple of years because there was some vandalism down there.
A couple of years ago.
Yes, yep. So we do the tree. We hang her stocking. We've got some people that send us cards and write to her. I go to visit her at the cemetery and do things like that. which at I'm 37 now, but at 31 years old, to have to put my name on a cemetery headstone was pretty traumatizing too. But I've grown up a lot in the last 5.5 years, so I just my time's gonna come at some point, hopefully a long, long time from now, but that's all prepared, and I just think about her constantly, and yeah.
What do you feel like has helped you heal in a way? Whether it's, your friends, your family doing things for you, what do you feel like has helped you move forward?
Yeah. I do think having Cal has helped me.
Yeah.
Again, he is not a replacement for her, but to give myself more love, to give more love to another baby has been amazing.
Yeah.
And it has been a distraction because it's very busy, but and just finding myself again. So I'm now done having kids. I made that conclusion probably at least a year or two ago, and just finding myself again. I love being a mom. It's the best thing ever, but I was like mom mode and then tragic mom mode for so long that I lost who Nicole was.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that I'm in a spot right now where I'm finding Nicole again, on top of being mom, and I enjoy working out and just getting my healthy lifestyle back and just feeling like myself again. So, and I like to go out and occasionally have some drinks with some girlfriends. Yeah. So yeah, just finding myself again and balancing that mom and Nicole together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel, and this is also personal, so you don't have to answer this either, do you feel like you and your husband handled the grief in different ways? Do you feel, and again, it does have to do with him, so I can completely cut this out if you want me to. But I do, at least for my husband and I, we handle stressful situations and grief and all of that completely different. Yep. Neither is better or worse, but do you feel like you both handled it in different ways?
Very different, yes. He's a quiet guy in general. He doesn't talk much, and I talk a lot. So I talk enough for the two of us, I'm sure. But yes, we handled it very differently. He doesn't talk very much about her. He would go to the cemetery by himself a lot, quietly, and I know he was grieving differently, but I would talk about her every time I could. Mm-hmm. I'd say her name in a room anytime I had a chance to, where he did not. And even just the two of us home alone, he doesn't talk about her very much, which now when we're busy and 5 years out, it's not like a constant conversation, but I was always the one bringing it up in the early days. But yes, very, very differently. I would go to bereavement meetings at the hospital. He did go one time, but not after that. So yeah, very differently.
I feel like that has to be normal in a sense for,
I think it is,
for two parents to handle it. Even describing you two right now, Tyler's very similar. So I think that it's gotta be hard in a way to not have someone grieve the same way as you, but to also know that they're still there and they're still supporting you is obviously important.
And I think he felt like, I'm sure that he needed to be the protector of the family. He had to go back to work right away. Yeah. He didn't get a maternity leave like I got. So he went back to a routine where, he had to go to work every day, come home, and we did our normal thing. But yeah, it was different. Did
you find yourself wanting to almost bring her up to talk about her?
Oh yeah. Yep. And he would talk about her, but again, it was like I had to pull it out of him. Yeah. And he has since lost his dad between these 5 years too. Mm-hmm. So seeing him lose his father was very difficult, but grieving the same way, doesn't talk about, much. And that's very different losses, obviously. But it's just, I think maybe him just in general, he's just a quiet guy. And
Okay, just a few more questions.
Sure.
What would you say to Etta if and I know that's a loaded question, but what would you say to her? And obviously we know she's listening to you, but
yeah. Thank you for asking that, because nobody asks that, so thank you. I just love her so much, and I hope that I'm making her proud, and I'm trying to keep her memory alive and do good things. In her loss, we were able to do a lot of things early on with donating the cuddle cot. But I hope I'm making her proud, and that I just hope she knows how much I love her.
She does.
Yeah.
You know she does.
I know. And then I hope that she's waiting for me with open arms when it's my time to go and I'm an old lady.
Do you ever find yourself, like, when you're alone or getting ready for bed, do you ever talk to her?
Yeah, I do. Especially because I drive a lot, driving in the car.
Yeah.
And things like that. Yeah, I do talk to her, and just when she gives me the signs, so I see 1111 all the time, or 111 all the time. She sends me dimes, and I just hang on to that as being a sign that she's with me and following me. And anytime I do, I'm, hi baby, I love you and miss you so much. Yeah.
And aside from the dimes as well, I know you represent her a lot with sunshine, right? Is that one of your tattoos?
I do have a little sunshine, yes,
Okay.
here. So, funny story. The reason that is because when I was pregnant, we asked Nora what we wanted to name her. We hadn't come up with a name yet. And at first she said Taco Bell. And we were laughed and said, because she was obsessed with tacos, we're like, maybe not.
Yeah.
We can come up with something
Let's try
else.
something else.
Yeah. And then she said Sunshine, and I thought that was super cute. I said, that could be her nickname. Like, we'll call her Sunshine. I love that. And then she ended up passing. So, the Sunshine, you are my sunshine.
Yeah.
Anything is associated with her. So,
I love that.
yeah.
What would you say to any moms, any parents right now that have just gone through what you went through, have just lost a baby, whether it was full term like you did, whether it was earlier in their pregnancy? What would you say to them?
I'm so sorry. It is so difficult to lose a child. I will say that I'm hopefully confident that that is the hardest loss there is. No parent should have to bury their child. That should not go that way. So I am so sorry, and you will get through it. The early days are very, very difficult. You feel super alone. But just know that it is unfortunately very common. Stillbirths, 1 in 160 pregnancies end in stillbirth in the United States, which equates to like almost 30,000 deaths in the United States alone each year. And then obviously we all know the 1 in 4 end in loss. So it's so common, but when you're in it and you're in it early on, you think you're the only one. There were people that came out of the woodworks that I've known for years that I had no clue had lost a baby full term. And it's something people don't talk about. And I hope that now that we're, more on the social media, we're on the internet all the time sharing our lives, that it becomes less of an awkward conversation and more people can talk about it, because I do feel bad for those mothers 50, 60 years ago that, the baby was swooped away, you didn't even get to see, and it was never spoken of again. That's traumatizing even more. So, but it's difficult, but you'll make it through. If you can find resources, do it. My book club book is about going to therapy. I've never done that. I didn't think I needed it, but now that I am 5 years out, I think it would be beneficial, and maybe I do try to seek somebody to talk to, because it's just a lifelong grief that I'll have to carry. For me, that saying like misery loves company, I don't want it to happen to anybody else. but there's comfort in knowing that there are others out there. So if you can seek those folks, and I have had close relationships, and yes, lean on them. I was lucky enough to have somebody come that was about 10 years out to our house within those first few weeks to talk to us about what, like, you know, the next 5-10 years are going to look like. And now that I'm 5 years out, I can have that conversation with somebody early on. And that is a lot of the time why I go to those bereavement meetings still. I don't go as often as I used to, but I don't need it as much as I used to, where I would have to go in that heavy grief. I go, one, to talk about her, because I just love talking about her anytime I can. But two, to help those folks that are so early and deep in their grief, because I feel like I have a little, you know, sight to what's to come.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to help anybody. I'm so sorry you're on that journey if that is what you're on, because it's very difficult, but you're not alone.
That's what I think is amazing about the motherhood community, is that you feel that you can help others that are going through this because you had people to help you as well.
Yep.
I think it's just, it's one big circle. And I think that's so, not that it made it any better, but to have that community of people who went through that. And now you can look back 5 years later and be that for someone else. Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And when you're early on, you don't think that you'll ever get out of that.
Yeah.
And the folks tell you will. And I will say I like see light again, and I don't carry that heavy grief every single day. So it does change. Yeah.
Okay, last question.
Sure.
This is what I have been asking everyone at the end. Okay. What does your next chapter look like?
Oh, I love that.
When it comes to you, your family, just your life, what does your next chapter look like? What do you want it to look like?
So I think I a little bit went into it a little while ago, was just finding me again. Yeah. I'm in that chapter right now where I'm, you know, getting into a groove of, I've lost weight, I'm exercising now, I'm in like a routine of balancing Nicole and mom, and my kids are getting a little bit older where, you know, they can handle some of their own things. I don't have babies anymore, so they are, you know, parenting is different for them too. But I would say just balancing mom and Nicole, and really getting to like enjoying life and seeing that light at the end of a dark tunnel, that I can live a full, joyful life and know that she's watching over and she's always with us, and she'll be there for me when it's my time, when I'm old and gray. But that's the next chapter right now, and I'm loving it. I will say I'm having a great time.
I just want to thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
This is something that's obviously it's a sensitive topic. Mm-hmm. Like you said, it's not talked about enough, and I do feel like a lot of people are afraid to talk about it, whether they have gone through it or not. So I really just want to say thank you for coming on, and you are genuinely one of the strongest people I have met. And
thank you.
You should just be really proud of how you've handled this and how you've honored her and the family that you've created.
Thank you. I've never done anything like this, so it was awesome.
I'm so glad you did.
And thank you for thinking of me too. And if I can help anybody, I love to talk about her, and if I can help anybody else that's in it, those are my two goals, is as much as I can talk about her and keep her alive, and if I can help anybody else. So.
Are there any, just to end this out, are there any like foundations or programs or anything that you want to kind of like give a shout out to, or you feel like are important or have helped you or could help someone else?
So the big one around here is Angel Names. That's a big association. And then there is a bereavement group that's part of Glens Falls Hospital.
Okay.
Healing Hearts is the name, I think. I'll just double check. But there's a nurse that heads it, that's part of labor and delivery, and she's the bereavement nurse as well, and they meet twice a month, most months, and I found those to be most helpful for me. Mm-hmm. And then I found, in the early days, online, Facebook groups and things like that, with moms that had just lost and really clung to that. But
All right. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Tyler. Thank you.
All right, and that is today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to go follow Next Chapter Collective on Instagram at Next Chapter Collective, and head over to the website, thenextchaptercollective.com, and check back here for new episodes every Tuesday. Bye, guys.